chapter 22, starting in verse 22. Okay? All right. And they listened to him up to this statement, and then they raised their voices and said, "Away with such a fellow from the earth, for he should not be allowed to live." And as they were crying out and throwing off their cloaks and tossing dust into the air, the commander ordered him to be brought into the barracks, stating he should be examined by scourging, so that he might find out the reason why they were shouting against him that way. And when they stretched him out with thongs, Paul said to the centurion who was standing by, "Is it lawful for you to scourge a man who is a Roman and uncondemned?" And when the centurion heard this, he went to the commander and told him, saying, What are you about to do? For this man is a Roman." And the commander came and said to him, "Tell me, are you a Roman?" And he said, "Yes." The commander answered, "I acquired this citizenship with a large sum of money." And Paul said, "But I was actually born a citizen." Therefore those who were about to examine him immediately let go of him. And the commander also was afraid when he found out that he was a Roman, and because he had put him in chains. I'm going to read the last. "But on the next day, wishing to know this for certain, why he has been accused by the Jews, he released him and ordered the chief priests and all the council to assemble, and brought Paul down and set him before them." We'll stop there. All right. So we're continuing a story, if you will, an event, I may say, where Paul was going to defend his faith. If you remember, verse 1 of chapter 22 of this chapter is Paul is ready to make a defense, right? An apologetic is what we call that, right? And so he gave basically his personal testimony. None of that testimony was about how wrong they are and how right I am. It wasn't that kind of an argument, right? Thing, because that's typically what we do when we argue. It's more about showing how right I am, and not so much about talking about the issue, about the fact. And this, Paul was talking the issue here, and that is about salvation, and where God had caused things to happen here. And he gets to 21, which was where we left off, and he said, "Go," and he's quoting what God had told him to do, Jesus told him to do. "Go, for I will send you away to the Gentiles." And in 22, that's what triggered it. And that was the trigger that made them go even more ballistic, if I could say more ballistic than they already were. They were already ready to punch them and beat them up and that kind of stuff. And this just really put them off. As it says in 22, "And as they listened to him up to this statement, and when they raised their, and then they raised their voices, 'Away with fellow, here, he should not be even allowed to live,' or should not be allowed to live." Why? Why would we be so upset about, I've come to witness to the Nazis. Put in your person there that you are a group of people that you want to do it. I've come to preach to the Arabs. I'm trying to think of some Chinese or Mexican, people from the south, the border. I don't know. Still
Cartel.
The cartel.
Yeah.
Right. Come and think of someone from New Orleans. I don't know. I don't know who the bad guys are anymore. Why would this group be so particularly upset? And particularly Gentiles.
Like Jonah always says, you got to put it into context, I guess. And,
Okay.
it was more or less just them against us against them type mentality, huh?
Well, you're absolutely right. I'm kind of listening as well. What they're saying, the culture is not so much they're the enemy, i.e. Nazis, or pick your enemy. It's we're chosen and no one else is. This is they're being selfish, to put it bluntly. It's not so much they do hate the other person. It's not so much they hate the other person for what they're doing, i.e. Nazism. They're not us. They're not one of us. So therefore, it's a Hatfields and McCoy thing. There is not necessarily an enemy. It's just they're not us.
And furthermore, back to the original accusation, they had that the Jews are zealous for the law, and then we're told that you go to the Jews who are among the Gentiles, you teach them to forsake Moses, and telling the Gentiles not to circumcise their children or walk according to our customs. So I think the reason they jump straight toward a death sentence to him is blasphemy, is where I kind of gather that they go. So I don't see how you go from an imprisonment or whatever punishment would be, just straight to just to death.
It's actually saying opposite of what God had told them before. In other words, God said, be circumcised, and you're saying, don't be circumcised. So you're going against, you're not trying to be a God.
Because they listened until he said, God sent me with the Gentiles, and then they're like, all right, that coupled with everything else, I mean, this has got to be some blasphemy going on. God would never tell you to do that.
Yeah.
Any other reasons why they'd be so upset?
This is a power thing you're leading toward.
It's kind of what you'd said about they were not us, right? But remember that the Jews they knew they were special. They knew they were set aside. And that everything else, as far as they were concerned, Gentiles were meant to feed the fires of hell. So there's a level, if you will.
Yeah.
And what they're thinking is, what they're seeing, being presented is, we're going to bring the Gentiles up to our level. All of a sudden now the Gentiles are special and selected and chosen ones. I mean, it's like, it's one thing to be someone else. It's another thing to say, I'm putting you on equal footing.
Yeah.
And their whole culture was about a status. It's even today, over there, status levels, classes, they call them. That thing is very real, that we have. We kind of have statuses and classes here in the United States. We do. If you dress poorly, consistently, you obviously are of one status.
Yeah.
If you drive that Maserati or whatever fancy car, a Tesla, then you must be of another status, right? That kind. If you're educated, you're in another class, and not educated, right? We have the same thing, and it's the same kind of thing here. How dare you put us at the equal level? Because it's not really them being brought up to you; it's you being brought down to them. That kind of a thing. So, all of those things that you reasoned are what feeds this anger here, and why they literally say should not be allowed to live. I think you could probably even say should not be allowed to exist. That's the anger that is there, the feminines there. Okay, and as they were crying out and throwing off their cloaks, not crying like a boo-hoo, just yelling out, their cloaks and tossing the dust in the air. So what is that about throwing off their cloaks and what is that? Why go through throwing off a perfectly good piece of clothing?
I know when they ripped their clothes off too, wasn't that something?
Yeah. What's all that about? I mean, kind of an odd thing to do.
Wouldn't that be an act of despair? Like after someone died? We've seen that before?
Yeah, I've seen that before like that, right? It's such an emotional break. What about the dust? I mean, they take
Is that part of the sackcloth and ashes part? I don't know.
It is an external expression of the grief, and it has morphed into more of a show than it is anything else. So it's the outward expression of great frustration, or a great emotional turmoil.
Kind of like the wailing at a funeral.
Right.
They would hire people to wail. That was the
Yeah, I know. They did. That's what I'm going to do. I've got to get my will.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Get my copy.
At least 6 wailers.
I need at least 6 people to wail good. There's a reference of an Old Testament reference about it. I forgot what it said. It was, but Steve's not here for me to go to my rapid lookup here. Okay, so while it's going on, this is not the end of the thought at 23. I don't know if your Bible breaks it into a paragraph or anything like that. It's a continuation here. of tossing things into the air, the commander ordered him to be brought, being Paul here, ordered Paul to be brought into the barracks, stating that he should be examined by scourging, that he might find out the reason why they were shouting out against him that way. And I put in my Bible a question mark.
Yeah.
What? Why? Huh?
That's typical of the whole Reformation type thing was, we're going to torture you till you confess.
Yeah.
You know,
And
which,
stroke one, I was like, okay, I did it. It's me.
Exactly.
I don't think mentally I do torture very well. I've never been tortured,
no.
except maybe, some sermons that have gone on too long. But I haven't really ever been tortured, if you will. So, what, you think this is a
What's
useful,
interesting is
practical
that
thing?
they're scourging him, so Paul can say why he's being persecuted.
Yeah.
Or,
And didn't Paul just answer why?
Yeah. But I think that was
So
their,
what's the commander really wanting to know? What is going on here?
but that was a common thing in those days, was to whip you till you confess. And that helps justify,
But a scourging is almost guaranteed to be a death sentence. Because remember, it's strips of leather that have embedded metal and stone and glass shards and
yeah.
anything that's got sharp edges, so that when it rips, it goes beyond just the surface of the skin, but down into the deeper
Muscles,
part,
yeah.
into the muscles, causing bleeding and excessive bleeding, and you die. I mean, that was the Roman art. They were very good.
And that's why they couldn't do 40 lashes, it was 40 minus 1.
Right,
It
right,
was said, because 40 was considered inhumane.
right.
And 30, so they would go right up to that point and stop.
Yeah, and I don't know what is humane about
I know.
one lash, let alone, because when you do that, it grabs into your skin, and then when they pull, it's pulling the skin. This is not a pretty, a polite thing, that's going on here. That scourging was basically a death sentence, and so the commander was heading towards that direction here. Again, his driving force is what? He's a Roman. That's my hint for the question here. Why would he want to do this? Keep the peace.
You know,
That's what it is. You got a big crowd going on. He needs to keep the peace. All he sees is they're focused on him. If we got rid of him, the peace would come back.
Well, and notice they're also doing this not out in public. They're doing it in the barracks.
Right.
So
Yeah. They're doing it in the barracks.
yeah.
Yeah.
where they have a little more control over it.
Yeah, that's true. They do have more.
And the crowds and everything else.
Yeah, exactly. It just seems strange to find out the reason why they are shouting. Wouldn't he want to scourge them to find out why they
I know.
are
That's
doing
what
it? I mean,
makes sense.
to me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to be, if you will, punishing or to me, the wrong person here. But hey, I'm on this side of the cross. What do I know? So over there. 25, and when they stretched him out with thongs, and I guess that's straps, thongs, right?
Yeah.
Stretched him out.
Thin pieces of leather.
Yeah, right? Okay. Paul said to the centurion, and now he starts to say it to the centurion. By the way, is this legal for you to do this to a Roman citizen? It's like now you bring it up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And uncondemned.
And on top of that, you weren't found guilty on any trial, right? And I am a Roman citizen.
It's pretty calm, it seems. Huh?
Yeah, you would think. I think I might have made mention of this much earlier.
Yeah.
With it, I
But
don't
maybe
know.
he waited until they got into the barracks where he could get away from the crowds a little bit.
Yeah.
That
hey,
mob mentality.
well, that makes me question it. Maybe if he had admitted, I don't know what else to say, expressed that he was a Roman back in chapters 21 or earlier, would the people even be upset? Because now, to their point of view, Roman citizen, you're not a Jew. From that point of view, you're not a Jew.
Is that true? Were there any Roman Jews?
Jewish Romans?
Jewish Romans,
Well, obviously
yeah.
Paul, but
But I mean, as a mass, I mean, the people that grew up there,
yeah.
I don't know if they had, what do you call it, You're born into the area, so therefore you're that.
When they,
That's all.
I do know that when Rome would occupy a territory, one of the things they would make is, what they do is would make a deal in that area. Hey, we'll be light on you if you guys do the following, and it could be like pay tribute, or it could say, or we'll give you Roman citizenship.
What I'm saying is that there is birthright citizenship only if your parents are Roman citizens themselves, not necessarily living in Roman territory, but an actual Roman citizen.
Okay.
So, and that's where Paul, he's got that birthright citizenship, as he talks
Right.
about. But
Right.
I guess if you are if you're a Jew who's a non-Roman citizen, and you're born in Roman territory, you're still a Jew, non-Roman citizen. And your children will always be too.
Interesting. It just occurred to me that the timing of when it says it.
Well,
Yeah.
It's interesting.
The timing, like to the Gentiles, I was a Gentile.
Right.
To the Jews, I was a Jew. And to the Romans, hey, it's
Hey, I'm
a
a
pretty
Roman.
convenient time for me to be a Roman.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So the question was raised in 26 and 27. Then the commander went up to and said to him, Paul, tell me, are you a Roman? And he answered, yes. 28. The commander answered, I acquired the citizenship with a large sum of money. And Paul says, I was actually born a citizen. What's this about the large sum of money?
Anything can be bought.
Well, more than that, if he's a tribune, I was reading that is appointed by the emperor
Yeah.
of the area. So possibly in one foul swoop, he went from being a non-Roman citizen all the way to a Roman citizen as a tribune also. So this
To a
is-
commander level.
Yeah,
On,
potentially in one foul swoop.
Yep. So the commander is saying, "Hey, I got my birthright, or I got my citizenship by paying off folks," which thousands of questions.
You
just
can
come
do
in
that
on-
now, though. There's some countries you can do that now.
Yeah,
I think like for 250,000 you can buy citizenship.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, even if you go through, like, people can get a British citizenship and a U.S. citizenship. You just go through the paperwork and pay the money with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So they're dual citizenship. Some countries have problems with that, some not so much.
Well, and the question is, well, not really a question, but you can do it underhanded to pay a guy to process it or stamp it or lie on a form or whatever, or like what you described is you're paying a fee. It's,
Yeah.
in theory, it's legal.
Right.
It's just costs money.
Right.
Where sometimes you can just pay off the right guy,
Yeah,
and
That's
they'll.
it.
And it's not necessarily a low guy that just slip in the paperwork. A lot of times it's the head guy that has his people do it for him.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
Like the rich, have a different level of justice type of thing.
yeah,
So
exactly.
you don't know. You don't know.
Okay, so 29, therefore, those who were about to examine him. So the word therefore, it's just kind of like, okay, this is settling it, right? That's the kind of therefore that's going on here. We're settled. Those who were about to examine him immediately let go of him, and the commander was also afraid when he found out. So, I have to ask it this way, because it seems like they just took his word for it. They took Paul's word for it. Just, yes. Oh, okay. Ooh, back it off. On it. Why would they do such a thing?
Did they carry papers in those days? I don't remember hearing anything. Or some other way to show, there's no passport or, so I don't think they had a way.
No, no, it was all by, which is, I know it's really weird to us because we're so used to a society that can lie so easily. We just lie easily. Just, yes, I am a native-born Indian. I am a whatever. You just say it. I'm a cat today.
Yeah.
We just we can lie. So for someone to say, yes, I am, and they immediately believe them like that, I think we lose the sense of the culture at the time. That if you say yes and you are found out to be false, It is definitely a Roman death sentence. It doesn't matter if you're a Roman or not. You're dead. If you lie to the officials, you're dead. Okay? Unlike here, you can lie to an official all day long, and
Yeah.
you know they're going to do all sorts of. Well, you won't die immediately. Immediately. Okay? And that's the kind of that environment they're in. When you say something to an official, it had better be true. Okay? They consider truth, the word, a lot more serious than we do in our culture today. So I know it seems strange that they would just believe them. But really, that's what it is. With it. We kind of miss those days.
Yeah.
Let your yes be yes. So immediately let go of him. The commander also was afraid when he found out that he was a Roman, and because he had put him in chains. Ooh, it must be even worse.
Yep.
Okay. And then 30. But on the next day, wishing to know for certain why he had been accused by the Jews. So, but on the next day, wishing to know why he had been accused. Who's the wishing?
This
Wants
is
to
the
know.
commander is what I was
I'm
saying.
thinking commander as well. It doesn't feel like it says it very explicitly, but I don't think it's Paul asking
No.
why was I, thing. I think that the context is it's the
Well, it
commander.
says he released him from the bonds, so it wouldn't be
Yeah.
Paul released his own bonds.
Right. By the Jews. He released him and ordered the chief, and then notice who he orders. Orders the chief priests and all the council to assemble, and brought Paul down and set him before them.
He ordered it.
Yeah, so,
He didn't ask.
that's right. Okay, you guys, come here. What is your problem?
Yeah. So it had to be one of the, because they had the temple guards
Yep.
that were Roman, were allowed, I don't know who they belonged to, but,
They were Jewish people. Temple guards.
okay, but they were
Absolute.
given power or authority by the Roman to a
Only,
certain degree.
yeah, tolerance. I guess maybe a better way of.
Yeah, but then they had to be brought to the Romans, Romans,
Right.
the centurions, etc., to do any physical thing.
Yep.
And so we're past the temple guards into the Roman side.
Right.
But they still had some authority over the chief priests and stuff. Not as much necessarily as Pontius Pilate or whatever the head guy was. There's hierarchies, right?
Yeah.
And then the Jews, slotted in there somewhere.
Yeah.
So apparently this commander had authority enough to order the chief priest to bring him. Didn't say asked or didn't say requested. It was,
And I don't think it was the temple guards bringing them in. I think it was the Roman soldiers ordering them to come.
that's what I mean. That's my point.
Right.
It's the Roman
Yeah,
side.
because the temple guards were literally constrained within the temple. The moment they stepped out of the temple, they are out of bounds.
This,
Very-
this might be one of those things where the Romans and the commander, whoever the emperor,
Mhm.
is giving the Jews autonomy within their realm,
Right.
so long as they're handling their business, and when I summon you, you come.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
because of this agreement, you guys have autonomy within the church, and that's
Right.
allows you to keep the peace kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, that's part of the deal
Yeah.
made when they took over that place.
Otherwise, they just conquer the place.
Right, exactly. So, what do you think would satisfy the commander and the wise? We will get to it next week, but 20.
Well, I'm assuming that it would not be from a religious standpoint,
Yeah, I would think so.
because he's not religious in theory.
Yeah.
He didn't care about the Jewish internal
Oh,
squabbles.
we are making presumption that
Yeah.
that he's not religious or of the faith, if you will. Even though we've had examples of when Jesus, the days of Jesus, where a Roman centurion would come to him, that kind of thing. So we've had those examples.
Well, and you saw how scared he was that, hey, I've almost got in trouble because I
Yeah.
arrested this guy and not to beat him, a Roman. So, hey, you got to come answer to me why you were trying to pull the wool over my eyes, or
Right.
Cover himself.
Yeah.
because he's
Yeah. Exactly.
and he's if he lets it slide, then he's allowing that behavior to continue, which is also a no-no.
Mm.
The behavior of the chief priest to manipulate him. So he's now it's personal to him.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with Paul directly.
Right. I
Now
understand.
it's personal because you tried to manipulate him.
It's kind of odd that the chief priests and everything that were summoned are different than, it's not James
Right.
and the
Yeah,
others.
yeah, no, this isn't the leaders of the way. This
Yeah.
is the leaders of the temple,
Yep.
Yeah,
the Jewish leaders, right?
the opposite end, yeah.
Exactly. All right, we're gonna stop it here because then these guys are now put on trial,
Right.
right? Is basically what's gonna happen here, and we'll see what goes on with that, all right? Okay, we'll stop here. Were you guys praying for it?